Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Stephen Melendez, and I'm going to be bringing you the latest and greatest in soccer news from around the world. Welcome back, everyone, to your favorite soccer podcast. We had a full week of Champions League football, which we talked about in the last episode, and Europa League football as well. And I'm so happy that we get that back to back. I mean, I know we have some domestic league playing right now. I'm going to be talking about a couple of the leagues now, not including this week. So anything that happens this week, I'm not going to be including in any of my, analysis on either the Bundesliga and La Liga, because that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But there were a lot of exciting games. Even in the Europa League, we had some top matchups. We had some upsets. And I'm excited to talk about all of them with you guys. And then, of course, continuing my top 10 all-time series. That's always a fun one there. So let's just get into what we're going to be talking about in today's show. So like I've been saying, we got the Europa League coming back. We had all the games going off on one day. And I just want to go and recap some of the games that happened. Of course, I don't know all the clubs here. We have some from around the world. So pretty much the game recaps that I want to give you guys are of the top clubs, or pretty much the clubs I know of, because I feel like that's the way I'll be able to give you guys the best analysis possible. Just talking about, where they are after their first game. Of course, it's only just one game, so there's a lot more to go off of that. But then after that, I'm going to be talking about the Bundesliga and just giving my early impressions on the standings there. And then, of course, same thing with La Liga. Same thing I've been doing with Serie A and Premier League. Just going to talk about, especially since they're starting to get into domestic league once again, I just want to quickly go over where each team stands heading into, their next matches. And then at the last part of the show, my favorite part, hopefully yours as well, I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 wingers of all time. We got a lot of incredible names on here too. I'm sure you guys will be very familiar of, and two that I'm super familiar of, so I can't wait to talk about them. You definitely want to stick around for that one. But yeah, let's just get right into today's show, talking about the Europa League. And the first game I want to talk about is the incredible game that Bayer Leverkusen gave us against Nice. I mean, they absolutely throttled them 6-2. Yes, 6-2. And I mean, it's not like they dominated them in terms of all the possession or passing stats. Nice were pretty much there. I mean, there was a 43%, 57% in favor of Bayer Leverkusen, but that's not something that you would expect, a 4-goal difference. I mean, and the worst part is they didn't have a chance early on. I mean, Bayer Leverkusen scored 2 early goals. Within 16 minutes, they were already up 2-0. One from Nadim Amiri and another from Lucas Alario. Just right off the bat, just already showing their presence. And I know that Bayer Leverkusen are an incredibly versatile attacking team. They have guys like Bellarabi, they got Moussa Diaby, who I'm super upset that PSG let them go. Yes, I'm always going to put in a little bit of PSG in there. They got Leon Bailey that I think is super, super good as well. And the Bender brothers, Wendell. They got a lot of great talent on that team. But in my opinion, I feel like Nice have some solid talent as well. I think the addition of Schneiderlin from Everton in that center defensive mid spot was an excellent addition. And Soki, who played in La Liga for a long time, I thought was also a great addition. And then Kasper Dolberg from Ajax. Like, they added some great talent to this team, but it's just not meshing well enough to really, I guess, perform in this Europa League, because to just get absolutely demolished in your first match, 6-2. I mean, yes, I feel like Bayer Leverkusen are one of the, top teams in this competition, even though, you also got teams like Napoli, you got teams like, which I'm going to be getting to later, you got Tottenham, you got Arsenal, you got some really good clubs, even AC Milan, who have started this season off incredibly well. But Bayer Leverkusen, I feel, have, one of the more dynamic attacks in this competition. So I understand that Nietzsche had, their hands full already, but they just look completely outmatched. I mean, and the defense, I expected so much more from that Nietzsche defense. I mean, they allowed 10 shots, which isn't a whole lot, but they allowed 9 of those shots on target. That's a terrible average. 90% of their shots were on target. That means that Nietzsche was not allowing them, not letting them get, felt at all. No presence was there from Nietzsche. It was just a flat game from them. And they had 10 shots as well, but only 3 of those were on target. So at least they hit on 2 of them. And one came in the 34th minute from Amin Gouiri. Man, some of these names are tough. But then another one kind of came in the 90th minute when everything was already done. It was already 6-1 from Alexis Claude Maris. It's just, they just never seem to really get it together. And then, you got from your number 9, Lucas Alario from Leverkusen. He chipped in, but then you got a goal from Moussa Diaby, you got 2 goals from Karim Bellarabi, and then you got another one from Florian Wirtz, and that's like a great overall team game from them, to get 5 different scores on a night where you absolutely dominated. That's the way you want to start off your Europa League campaign. You want to start it off with a bang and really show people that, yes, we are here to dominate. And they looked really, really good. And I was really impressed with what they gave us. So, yes, Bayer Leverkusen absolutely dominated their first match, 6-2. And Nietzsche have a lot of things to answer. Not a very good start. And when you look at their group, let me see, where's their group here? They're like one of the first groups, right? Yeah. I mean, they're in a group with Slavia Praha and with, what's this other team's name? I'm not even going to try. Hapoel Beersheva FC. 2 clubs that I have no idea where they're from. I know Slavia Praha is from, where are they from? I'm not 100% sure. But from the Czech league. So, I mean, it's not really a top league. Like, come on, Nietzsche, you're part of one of the top 5 leagues in the world. You got to represent French football a little better than that. But, again, Leverkusen are obviously the better team in that entire group. So I expected them to win that game, but not by that much. And with Beersheva winning their first game against Slavia Praha, Nietzsche have a little mountain to climb now. But next, the other game I want to get into is a game between 2 teams that I feel that I know for sure, and one that I've covered enough. Granada versus PSV. Now, PSV are one of the top clubs from their league. I believe it's from the Eredivisie club, I'm pretty sure. But let me see, from the Dutch league. I knew that. And so they're coming in here and they look really good in their league. And they have some young talent on there. I mean, they're second in the league right now, just a few points behind Ajax, who are obviously always one of the better teams there. But they come into this game and they lose to Granada 2-1, and they started off with a lead, even though it was late. Sorry about that. Even though it was late in the first half, Mario Götze, their new signing, gets a goal in extra time of the first half, and it looked like, okay, yeah, PSV, they bid their time, and now they are finally getting it together, and they're going to go away with a win here. But then Granada, man, just chipping away, getting a goal from Jorge Molina in the 57th minute, and then Darwin Machis in the 66th minute, just doing what they do, man. I mean, I I have loved this Granada team, the way they have found a way to continue to put up results because, how they were newly promoted last year and finished, I believe, 10th in La Liga, which is incredible. Or I think it was 8th or something like that, which is just an incredible start for them. And then you come here in the Europa League. I'm assuming it's one of their first times in the Europa League, and they put up a 2-1 victory. Just a big time result for Granada, and they just continue to impress people. I mean, so far this season, you also got the other newly promoted side like Elche and Cadiz also performing well in La Liga. I think that's a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of their competition hasn't been so good yet, but still, Granada, they're in 7th place in La Liga, looking really good to start their season, and just another big time result against a big time team in PSV, and they were active. They had 17 shots on PSV, even though only 4 of those were on target. They were active, and they were making sure they were getting a lot of opportunities, and there were a lot of fouls in this game. It was 17 fouls for Granada, 16 for PSV, so this was a very aggressive game, and 5 yellow cards for Granada as well. So they were obviously being extremely active and trying to make PSV feel them, and they certainly did that. And they come away with 3 points and are now in the lead in their group. I love it, man. I love what Granada shows. It's one of those teams that it's hard not to root for because they always seem to be, doing the right things. And even with such little budget that they have, they find a way to find the players that fit their system and they win with it. And I love that. Next, we have a game between Napoli and AZ Alkmaar. Now, I do not know where AZ Alkmaar is from. I'll go ahead and look right now real quick to see where they're from. They're also from the Dutch league. So, they're in a pretty solid league, but they're not one of the top teams in this competition. They're not one of the teams, probably in their group, they're maybe expected, but the thing is, they're also in a group of Real Sociedad, Napoli. If anybody is looking at this, you're probably expecting Real Sociedad and Napoli to make it through. But, there's something about Serie A teams underperforming in this Europa League stage, because last season, when you had Lazio here, and you were looking at Lazio, and they're like, they got Luis Alberto, they got Immobile, one of the best strikers in the world. They're obviously going to make it through. And they lost in the group stage. Now, I do not expect Napoli to go down that same route because I just feel like they have so much more depth in their team. And, you got guys like Victor Osimhen, you got Dries Mertens, Lozano, Koulibaly. You got an overall great team. And then Merritt, one of the better young goalkeepers in the world. It's just how did you lose 1-0 to Alkmaar? That just looks bad, man. That just looks really, really bad. And they couldn't get anything going. Even though Napoli had a bunch of shots, they had more possession. They were just playing better overall ball, better play on the pitch. They couldn't get that final ball. They had 20 shots and only 6 of those were on target. Alkmaar had less shots overall than Napoli had on target. They had 5 and only 2 on target. That is just unacceptable from Napoli. And to have 73% possession as well, 91% pass accuracy compared to 72% from Alkmaar. Everything was going right for them. Even Alkmaar were fouling more. But man, Napoli got caught offsides 5 separate times. Alkmaar didn't get caught once. They didn't have the ball as much, so it wasn't as frequent for them to get up the pitch. But man, for Napoli to start their Europa League campaign off down 1-0 to Alkmaar, they're gonna they have an easier competition in Rijeka, but I don't want to count them out, especially the way Napoli are playing right now, and they're looking good in Serie A. So I just do not understand why they come into this game, and they have pretty much all their top players. They got, like I said, they got Koulibaly, they had Fabian Ruiz playing, they had Politano, they had Mertens, they had Lozano, and Osimhen. They had all those guys up top, and yet they still find a way to lose this game and are now needing to catch up in points. And they're, in the next 5 games. But next, let's talk about Benfica defeating Lech Poznan and looking pretty good doing it. I mean, they won 4-2. They got a hat trick from Darwin Nunez, looking really good. They got off to a strong start with a penalty goal from BC in the 9th minute. So they got on the scoring sheet pretty early. However, they allowed Mikhail Ishak to get that goal right back in the 15th minute. They did, however, go into halftime up 2-1. So, they kept the pressure, and they allowed Poznan to really stick in this game. I mean, they were getting a lot of opportunities. They had 19 shots, 9 on target. The possession was pretty even, and Poznan even had better pass accuracy. So they were obviously getting the ball around a lot easier. They were being more aggressive in this game. They had more yellow cards. They had more offsides. They didn't have as many corners. They had Benfica had twice as many corners as Poznan. But, I mean, in the end, Darwin Nunez came through for them, getting that goal right before halftime in the 42nd minute, and then scoring again in the 60th minute to make it 3-2 after Ishak had brought it right back literally 3 minutes into the second half. I mean, Poznan, it was impressive the way they were able to keep up with Benfica, which you wouldn't normally expect. But I actually think, even though their defense was very suspect, it was not very good in this game at all to allow, those 4 goals. I definitely expect them to really possibly make it into the knockout rounds, because I like the way they were playing, even though they do have the Rangers to worry about. The Rangers FC from the Scottish Premiership. I just expect. I think those are going to be some good matches between Lech Poznan and the Rangers. I feel like those are going to be some good matches to watch. But Benfica come through with a 4-2 victory. Next, we're going to go to a Premier League giant in Arsenal, defeating Rapid Wien, 2-1. With the goals from back-to-back goals, pretty much, from David Luiz and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to save this team, really, because they didn't score at all in the first half, and then Rapid get off to a quick start in the second half with a 51st minute goal from Tisharis Fontas, and, I mean, this was a pretty even match, even though Arsenal had more possession, because, they obviously pressure a lot and they get the ball more, so they're able to hold it into their own half, but they did not have as many opportunities. They only had 11 shots to Rapid's 12, and they each had the same amount of shots on target. So this wasn't a dominant victory by any means from Arsenal. You should definitely expect a lot more from them, but their individual quality eventually came through. You got that goal from David Luiz, which I haven't seen him score a goal in a while, so that's a revelation for them. And then, of course, Aubameyang, their captain, their star player, coming through and getting the winner shortly after that. And of course, you're excited. You're in the Europa League. Even though this year they obviously have higher hopes of making into the Champions League, but they're definitely one of the stronger teams. I feel like they're getting Partey in that team is also a huge get. Getting him in the middle of the pitch is going to be big time. Obviously, Gabriel is going to be huge. They have been using Nicolas Pepe a lot more recently, and then having Willian on the bench, but they didn't even have Willian in this game, so it's possible that he was a little injured. And Aubameyang came in late in this game. He came in, what time did he come in to the game? Where's it at? He came in the 61st minute for Eddie Nketiah, who's the youngster's been showing a lot of stuff late in this game, but for the Gunners to get those 2 goals in the space of 5 minutes from both Luis and Aubameyang, it turned the match around, and it gave them those 3 points that they really needed to get off to a hot start in this Europa League campaign. So big time start for them. But now let's go to the Roma versus Young Boys match. And in this one, Roma got off to a bad start. I mean, allowing a penalty to the Young Boys in the 14th minute and being down for most of this game. They didn't score that equalizer until the 69th minute. So there was obviously a lot of pressure on Roma to get this goal back. and they did not look dominant by any means. They only had 6 shots throughout the entire game, and only 2 of those were on target. So luckily for them, they were 2 for 2 on those shots on target, getting both goals there. But Young Boys were keeping them pretty much, I guess, contained for most of this game, because even though the possession was pretty even, at 44%, 56% in favor of Roma, you just got to see more from a club like that, who is, has played pretty solid in the Serie A. You just need to see more from them. But the Young Boys, big props to them for really, pushing Roma to the edge and forcing them to have to bring something out of nowhere, and getting those 2 goals pretty much back to back, same as Arsenal, in the 69th minute and the 73rd minute. So that pretty much turned the game around completely, and see them, get those 3 points that they really needed, to start this campaign. Next, we're going to move on to AC Milan versus Celtic. This is one of the, better games going on throughout the competition, because Celtic, one of the top teams in the Scottish Premier League, and then obviously AC Milan, who have looked just absolutely unstoppable so far to start this season, looking like the AC Milan of old. I'm sure those, AC Milan fans are extremely excited to see them perform this way to start the season, and I feel like it's sustainable. I mean, they have a lot of great talent. Obviously Zlatan Ibrahimovic ages like a fine wine. You got what's his name? The number 10, Heran. I don't know how to say his name, but he's obviously extremely well. You got Donnarumma. You got Sandro Tonali, who has been playing a lot for them in that number 8 role. And then you also got Theo Hernandez, one of the best left backs in the world, who I feel is a really good option there on that left side. He brings a lot of dynamic attack to their side, and then you also got some great defense from him as well. And then you got Romagnoli, and then you got Kajar handling that back line with Donnarumma. And I feel like they have a really good overall team, and they showed that in this game. Getting off to a quick start, scoring in the 14th minute, and then right before halftime as well, to go into the break up 2-0. But then Celtic did get that goal back from Mohamed El Yonossi in the 76th minute to make it a game, make it 2-1. But then AC Milan were able to hold off Celtic's rush and Celtic's pressure, because obviously late in that game, they get that equalizer. Even if it's a 2-0 game, I never care. It's like all the team needs to do is get 1 goal before they're 1 goal away. That's all it is. It's just, and that can happen in like the flip of a switch. But AC Milan were able to hold on and eventually counter that pressure with a goal in extra time from Jens Peter Hausch. So, really good start to the Europa League campaign for Milan, defeating pretty much, in my opinion, the top team in this competition. And not Celtic, the top team, but one of the top teams in this group for them. But they're in a pretty strong group. I mean, you got Lille in this group as well, Celtic, which are, I feel like they're a pretty strong team, and you got Sparta Prague, another pretty good team. But I mean, obviously, it's going to be between those first 3, and I feel like AC Milan are going to pass through this pretty easy. I mean, they should pass through this pretty easy, but we'll just have to see. But for now, they have started the season off pretty strong. Now let's go through some of the other teams. I mean, you got Tottenham defeating Lask 3-0, looking very strong early on, getting goals from Lucas Moura and Song. But then they did get an own goal early on in this game as well in the 27th minute, so that obviously helped. But they were pretty dominant throughout this game. I mean, they had more shots. The possession was pretty even. Even pass accuracy was pretty even. But they were, they kept their composure. And whatever Lask brought at them, they were able to, hold off, play good defense, and they didn't even have all their strong players. You had Vinicius in there. You didn't even have Harry Kane. They did have Gareth Bale playing. That was exciting for them. Hugo Lloris was on the bench. Song was on the bench. You got Kane on the bench. Dele Alli, Bergwijn, Serge Aurier. They had Dombele. They had a lot of their best players on the bench, and they were still able to go through this with ease. But that just goes to show their overall depth. I do like their fullbacks, Doherty and Reguilon. I feel like they add a lot of extra attack to this team. But then it's really nice to see Joe Hart play some significant games here. It's been a while since he's been on top of the league. There was a while, pretty much when I first started watching soccer, he was one of the better goalkeepers in the world. So it's nice to see him finally, get back into some, real, worthy games. Next, we got Leicester City also dominating their game 3-0. They got games from James Maddison, Harvey Barnes, and Iheanacho, and pretty much completely dominated Zorya Luhansk, and that's what's expected of them. They're easily the better team in this entire group between Braga, EAK, Athens, and Zorya, and I expect them to go through this with ease. Although Braga also dominated their first game against Athens, winning 3-0. So we'll just have to see how that game turns out. But great start for Leicester City as well. And then you had Lille, another French club that I'm always rooting for the French clubs. They defeat Sparta Prague 4-1, get a hat trick from Youssef Yaziki, and get another goal from Ikong. Just a strong game from them, and I expect them to pretty much be dominant after pretty much flailing in the Champions League last season. I expect them to really come out with with a lot of fire and show what they got. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the Bundesliga and my early impressions of that league.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, I just went over all the Europa League matches. Well, not all of them, but just the ones of the, top clubs in the Europa League. And now we're going to be going over the Bundesliga and just some of the early impressions of that league. I am not going to be including any of the games that are happening right now or, throughout this weekend. So pretty much I'm just going to go over what happened last week and, since the season started. So let's just get right into it. Starting off with RB Leipzig, who have started this season off pretty strong. If I should say so myself. I mean, they have 4 games in. They were up. They had pretty much 3 wins and a draw. Those 3 wins were against Augsburg, Schalke, and Mainz. They had the draw against Leverkusen, who are obviously looking like a pretty strong club, even though they haven't really given you the results you expected so far this season. And I believe they're looking at they have a game this week against Hertha Berlin. It probably, by the time you guys are listening to this, it's probably already done. But yeah, so far this season they've looked pretty solid. Getting those results that they need. They did get that draw against Leverkusen, but 3 wins and a draw early on in this season with 10 points. That's pretty solid. You gotta like that. For Bayern, coming in at number 2, they also, what do you expect from them? Even though they got a red card in their game against Armenia don't have anywhere near the type of talent that Bayern do, and they destroyed them 4-1. Bayern also defeated Hertha Berlin 4-3, but the biggest game, though, was that loss against Hoffenheim, losing 4-1. Now, I am sure nobody expected that, but they did start this season off with a ridiculous bang, defeating Schalke 8-0. I mean, that was a ridiculous start to the season. And so, but having 9 points in the first 4 games, I mean, for them, that's bad. You expect them to defeat Hoffenheim. So to lose 4-1 to them, that was obviously a big-time shock, not something anybody expected. But Hoffenheim have the talent. I mean, I certainly didn't expect that. When I actually talked about that game before, I thought it was going to be the other way around, 4-1 in favor of Bayern, which I'm sure plenty of other people did as well. But they're obviously still the top team in this club, even though RB Leipzig are technically ahead of them in the standings. I mean, Bayern Munich have scored a total of 17 goals to start the season, allowing only 8. Just a huge start. I mean, RB Leipzig's defense has been pretty solid. I mean, only allowing 3 goals in their first 4 matches. But I'm just really impressed with the way Bayern have started this season. Next, we got Dortmund, who in their first 4 matches also have 3 wins and a loss. They haven't been as dynamic as I expected them to be. They've only scored 8 goals this season. However, their defense has been there to pick up the slack, allowing just 2 goals throughout this entire season. They've got 3 clean sheets. One against Mönchengladbach in that Borussia derby going on there. They 4-0'd SC Freiburg, which I hate to see. I'm always a big fan of Freiburg. And they 1-0'd Hoffenheim. They did get a clean sheet against them of their own, getting 2-0'd against Augsburg, which is I don't even know how that happened. But yes, that did start for them. They did also lose that DFL Super Cup 3-2 to Bayern, which was a very exciting game to watch. But as always, what we expected to start this season, those 3 clubs are in the top 3. I didn't expect anything less, even though in a lot of other leagues, you have some teams, at least to start the season, are doing better than what people expected. But as always in the Bundesliga, you get those 3 clubs on the top, and I'm not surprised by that at all. Next, we have VfB Stuttgart, who in their first 4 games have 2 wins, a draw, and a loss. Not terrible at all by any means. They have scored 10 goals, which is the 3rd best in this league, and they got a win against Hertha Berlin. They defeated SC Freiburg 3-0, which again I cannot stand to see. Leverkusen, which seemed to be drawing against everybody, also drew against Stuttgart. And then early on in the season, they took on SC Freiburg again, but they were defeated in that one. That was their only loss, losing 3-2. And then in a red card fest against Mainz, they defeated them 4-1. So to start the season, Stuttgart have taken on some, in my opinion, pretty easy competition. Even though that Leverkusen game, to get a draw against them is obviously very impressive. Playing SC Freiburg twice and splitting those 2 games, kind of is expected. But sorry about that. I got a little, I got a little caught up with my words there. But really strong start for them. You get 7 points in your first 4 games. You're in the top 5. Obviously this is just the start of the season, so there's obviously some teams that are expected to come up a little bit more than them, but great start for Stuttgart. I mean, they got some pretty strong players. I mean, you got guys like Nicolas Gonzalez, you got Gregor Kobel, their goalkeeper, Wataru Endo, you got Eric Tomi, Sasa Kalajic. They got some pretty solid players, but I don't expect them to be here, that much longer. Of course, as the season goes on, you'll probably see them as a mid-table club. But I think I had them as lower, like bottom half of the table. So really strong start for Stuttgart, and they're looking really good to start this season. Next, we have Mönchengladbach with 4 games to start their season. They have They got 1 win, 2 draws, and a loss. Not the best start for them, just 5 points in their first 4 games. I know that they had a game this weekend, which they won, but like I said, I'm only going off the games that happened before. And, I mean, strong start for them. You know what? Forget it. I'll talk about the games that also came down. But, like, for Stuttgart, got a what is it, a draw, and they're at 8 points. Bayern won their game. Man, why am I doing this? Bayern won their game, so now they're at 12 points, just behind RB Leipzig, who also won their first game. There are some games that I'm not going to be able to cover because it has not happened yet. But for Mönchengladbach, they won their first game. Not their first game. They won their. Oh my God! I'm going to cut this all down. So now we're going to move on to Mönchengladbach, who, within 5 games to start the season, have 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. They have 8 points to start the season, and they have an even goal differential with 8 goals for, 8 goals against. And they look pretty strong this season. I mean, they got the win against Mainz recently this weekend. They got a draw against Wolfsburg. They beat Köln. They drew against Union Berlin, and they did lose against Dortmund in that first game of the season. So there were some opportunities for them to get more points here and be squarely in that top, near that top 3, or even ahead of Dortmund and looking pretty solid. But obviously Dortmund still have that game in hand. But at least to start, they've looked pretty good for the beginning of the season, and I feel like that for them, they have some really strong players. I mean, you got I love Jan Sommer between the sticks, even though he's had a pretty bad start to the season. You have Bril Mbolo, you have Alessandro Pli, Marcus Thuram. You have some really good players on this team that I feel in the end are going to win out and at least get in that Champions League spot. But we'll just have to wait and see. Next, we have Eintracht Frankfurt to start the season, 5 games in. They've also got 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. However, they have allowed a few more goals and scored 1 less than Mönchengladbach. 7 goals scored, 9 goals allowed for a negative 2 goal differential. But I mean, they've gotten some solid results. I mean, even though they just ran into a brick wall in Bayern Munich this weekend with a 5-0 loss. They did draw against Köln 1-1. They lost against Wolfsburg Kickers. No, that's a club friendly. What in the world? They're doing a club friendly in between all this. They won against Hoffenheim. That's a solid win. Hertha Berlin. They did draw against Arminia. That is not a good result for them there against that newly promoted side. But you just got to you see Eintracht Frankfurt, and they look pretty solid to start the season. They've dropped some points here, but overall, not a terrible start. I mean, to be 6th place, even though all the teams are pretty close together, so 1 loss, can obviously take you down a few notches in the standings. But be 6th place after 5 games, pretty solid start for them. Next, we got Augsburg, who have gotten some pretty solid results. As I've already talked about, they did lose to RB Leipzig last week, or what was it? Yeah, last week 2-0. They got a draw against Wolfsburg. They defeated Dortmund, which was huge for them, and they also defeated Union Berlin to start the season. So huge start for them early on, and I definitely am surprised to see them as high as they are right now. They have been a very conservative team. They haven't really, played a lot of attacking football. They've gotten only 5 goals this season in their first 4 games, but they have only allowed 3 goals. So, their system works for them. They got a +2 goal differential, looking very solid. And, you just got to give props to them. Next, we have Werder Bremen at number 8. Obviously, to start the season doing a lot better than they did last year. And I was expecting this. I didn't expect them to be as bad as they were last season. But they did get a draw against SC Freiburg last year. What am I talking about? Last week, they defeated Arminia, so they got that goal. Those 3 points they needed. They defeated Schalke, another 3 points they needed to get there. They did lose big time to Hertha Berlin 4-1 to start the year, so that did not look good for them early on. But they have been able to, get 7 points in their next 3 matches after that. So big time turnaround for Werder Bremen, and they are now in 8th place and looking pretty solid with a game in hand. Next, we have Hoffenheim, who 4 games in, also 2 wins, 2 losses, so they got 6 points. They have scored 8 goals and allowed 6, so they've been a very dynamic team throughout the year. They did lose to Dortmund last week, and to Eintracht Frankfurt the week before that, or I guess 2 weeks before that. But because there was that international break, but they did get that huge win against Bayern 4-1, and they defeated Köln 3-2 before that to start the season. So their season start was huge. Something that not a lot of people expected, but then they dropped some points to Frankfurt. Dortmund, that's an expected loss, but it was 1-0, so it was very close. Something that they could have for sure turned around. But now, going into a game against Werder Bremen this weekend, they need to win that game. Even though Werder Bremen's looking at it the same way, they've started the season pretty well, and they're looking to get those points and be squarely in that top 10. That's gonna be a very exciting match. Next, we have the little club that could. I love this club. I'm always a big time fan of the lower clubs. Union Berlin. They've got 3 in 5 games. They got 3 draws, a win, and a loss. They also have scored 8 goals and allowed 6. They did get that draw against SC Freiburg this weekend. They also got a draw against Schalke last weekend, which was something that they needed to get that win. That's not something that you need to see from Union Berlin, with Schalke absolutely pretty much selling off all their players. They did get a big time win against Mainz early on with the 4-0 victory, and then they got a nice draw against Mönchengladbach 1-1. But then they lost 3-1 to Augsburg. So there's some games here that they certainly dropped points, and I feel like they could have done a lot better. But again, Union Berlin, 10th place, starting off the season, getting 3 draws with 5 games. You should see something better from Union Berlin, but honestly, to start the season, that's pretty solid. Next, you have Leverkusen, who in their first 4 games have a win and 3 draws. They have certainly dropped points that you do not expect them to do. They beat Mainz, which was their first win of the season, but then they drew against Stuttgart. They drew against RB Leipzig, which was a good game there, but then they drew against Wolfsburg 0-0. For a team that just put up 6 goals in the Europa League, you do not expect them to finish a game with a 0-0 draw. They need to show more than that. I mean, they got plenty of attacking players to do that. I already talked about them: Patrick Schick, Leon Bailey, Moussa Diaby, Aranguiz. They got players, Balarabi. They need to show up week in and week out in order for them to be where they're supposed to be. But right now at 11th place, even though it is early on in the season, they need to show more than that. Next we have SC Freiburg, who also another team that I expected to do a lot better than this. I have 1 win, 3 draws, and 1 loss 5 games into their season. Getting a draw against Werder Bremen, and then a draw against Union Berlin back-to-back weeks. They did get that loss to Stuttgart 3-0, and then another loss 4-0 to Dortmund, even though that Stuttgart game was actually a club friendly, because I'm sure, I guess throughout that international break, some Bundesliga teams, or I guess some teams in general, had some club friendlies. But a 4-0 loss to Dortmund, that hurts. And then a 1-1 draw to Wolfsburg. It's just a lot of missed opportunities for them. I feel like they could have for sure beaten Wolfsburg. They could have beaten Union Berlin this weekend. And even Werder Bremen. I mean, I feel like SC Freiburg have some very solid players. They got their all-time goal scorer on this team. And then they have some really, really good players. Christian Gunter, I'm a big-time fan of. And I just feel like they could do a lot better than what they have so far this season. But for right now, they are squarely in 12th place and on the at the bottom looking up. However, they are still with 6 points. It's not like they've lost a lot of games. They have 6 goals, 9 allowed. So they just need to do a little better on that defensive end and get a few more goals here and there. But and going back to Leverkusen, when I looked at they've only allowed 2 goals, but they've only scored 3. Like, that is just not good for Leverkusen. But yeah, let's move on. We got Wolfsburg, who have 4 matches, 4 draws. I mean, they have not been able to get the results they're hoping for, even though they got a 1-1 draw against Mönchengladbach. That's solid. They got a goalless draw against Augsburg, a 1-1 draw against SC Freiburg, and then a goalless draw against Leverkusen. So I guess that Leverkusen and Mönchengladbach, you'll take those points, even maybe against Freiburg and Augsburg. I mean, I guess, but I mean, Wolfsburg have talent. They got guys. They got Weghorst, one of the better strikers in the league. They got John Brooks, Kevin Mbabu, William. Like, come on, Brecalo. They got Maximilian Arnold. They got guys. They should not be drawing every single match, but I mean, the way you got to look at it, they're at least getting results. They're at least getting points. It's better than losing those matches and not getting a single point. That is why they're at least 13th and not, amongst the relegated. So, you gotta take half glass full type of look at Wolfsburg. Next we have Arminia, the recently promoted side, and they do have a win, a draw, and 2 losses. They did lose to Werder Bremen 1-0. That's kind of a tough loss. They did defeat Köln 1-0, but Köln looking like one of the worst teams so far to start this season. So you take that as you may. But then they got a draw against Frankfurt to start the season, but they did lose 4-1 to Bayern Munich, which is obviously expected of them. They are taking Wolfsburg on this weekend. We'll be excited to see how that turns out. 2 of the teams literally right next to each other. Does Wolfsburg get another draw? Do Arminia get a win here? That'll be exciting to see there. Next, we have Hertha Berlin, who 5 games in have 4 losses. Just recently, the first game of the season was actually looking pretty solid for them. They had a 4-1 win over Werder Bremen. Obviously, for Bremen, that was not looking good. But for Hertha, they were like, all right, we got a pretty solid start to the season. But then they followed that up with a 3-1 loss to Frankfurt, a 4-3 loss to Bayern, which really hurt. I mean, they would have loved to get at least a draw there, after giving up a late penalty to Robert Lewandowski, who scored 4 goals in that game. So that obviously hurt for Hertha Berlin. But then a 2-0 loss to Stuttgart and a 2-1 loss to Leipzig, where they had a red card in that game in the 50th minute. So that obviously did not help them there against a team that obviously has more talent than them in RB Leipzig, and pretty much handed them the win there. But yeah, that's why they're at 4 losses in 5 games. But they haven't looked terrible. I mean, the defense hasn't been good. They're one of the only teams. They're one of only 3 teams to allow double-digit goals already so far this season. But they have scored 9 goals, which is good for 4th in the entire league. So they obviously have, the attack. They got Christoph Piatek, Matthias Cunha. They even got Matteo Guendouzi from Arsenal, but we'll have to see how that goes. They have Alexander Schwallow, so they have a lot of good talent on this team, but they need to put it together in one full game and actually, get those results. Because four losses in 5 games, that's not going to cut it, and that's going to have them in the relegation zone for a while. However, I do expect Hertha Berlin to squeak up a little bit more. Now let's look at the 3 relegation zone teams. Köln at 16 with 0 wins, 2 draws, and 3 losses. Schalke with 1 draw and 3 losses. And Mainz with 5 losses in 5 games. Now, for Schalke and Mainz, their defense has been absolutely atrocious to go along with their atrocious offense. Like, Schalke have the worst goal differential with a minus 14 in 4 games. That's just terrible. But this was expected. I mean, for them to absolutely strip their team of any kind of talent, they still got some guys, but honestly, they took away most of their talent. They lose 3-1 to Werder Bremen. They get a draw to Union Berlin at least. They do take on Dortmund this weekend, so I'm pretty sure that's not going to go pretty well. But then an 8-0 loss to Bayern and a 4-0 loss to RB Leipzig. It's just, when they take on those top tier teams, man, they just do not have the results. They don't have the talent to keep up, and it's shown. And 4 matches, 3 losses. Köln have at least gotten a few draws here and there. They got that draw against Frankfurt and a draw against Stuttgart this weekend. So they've at least done a little bit to at least squeak up a little. But before that, they started off this season with 3 straight losses. One to Arminia, one of the recently promoted clubs, to Mönchengladbach and Hoffenheim. So they just need to do a bit better. They don't have a lot of great talent. I mean, they got Jonas Hector, Timo Horn, Dimitrios Limnios. So they got some guys, but they need to do more than they have. And then Mainz. I mean, they haven't taken on the toughest of competition. They did lose to RB Leipzig. They did lose to Stuttgart, Union Berlin 4-0, making them look like one of the better teams. Leverkusen 1-0, and then Mönchengladbach to this weekend 3-2. So Mainz have not started this season well at all. 5 losses in 5 games, and they need to shore their stuff up, because 15 goals allowed in 5 games. Obviously not as bad as Schalke, but Schalke had to take on Bayern Munich, who absolutely dominated them in the start of the season, 8-0. So you take away, half of those goals, and they're not looking as bad in terms of defense, but, still, Mainz need to do better. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the La Liga season and just see how they've been doing so far.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, I went over the Bundesliga season so far. Just talked about some of the games that happened this weekend, and just how the season looks so far. Now we're going to be talking about La Liga, and just same thing. Just go over some of the early impressions of the year. Some teams are about 6 matches in, so let's just see where they all are in the standings. To start this season, we got Real Madrid on top. They had the El Clásico this weekend and actually defeated Barcelona 3-1. Not something that some people were expecting after what looked like an absolute reversal heading into in the Champions League. Real Madrid losing to Shakhtar and Barcelona absolutely defeating their competition 5-1. So a lot of people were expecting Barcelona to come in here and prove that they are back on top of the I'm still thinking about the last segment of La Liga. But that is just not the case. Real Madrid continue to show that their defense has what it takes to keep the best of the best down. And it's been different. I mean, obviously things change when you got guys like Sergio Ramos playing, because obviously that makes a big time difference. Sergio Ramos in the backfield. You also got Benzema playing to start the game. You have Vinicius Jr. starting the game. They do have Luka Modric on the bench. They did eventually start him, not start him, but put him in off the bench, substitute him in. But honestly, strong start for Real Madrid to start the year. They got 4 wins, a draw, and a loss in their first 6 matches to go with 13 points. The attack hasn't been as crazy, which was what was expected. It's going to be a little tough for them to get a lot of goals going, especially since they're still kind of trying to figure out how to score on a regular basis without Cristiano Ronaldo. But 9 goals in 6 matches, 4 goals allowed, which is what's more expected from them. Really strong start from Real Madrid. Next, we have Real Sociedad, who have had an extremely strong start to the season, looking good in the Europa League, and it's kind of what you expect. They did have a terrible, and I mean terrible, loss to Valencia, 1-0. They should have won that game. I mean, and that's really the only reason they're not number one. That's the only game that they have lost this season. Other than that, they defeated Elche. They drew against Real Madrid to start the season, so that was obviously a good start for them. But then they defeated Getafe and they defeated Real Betis. Both of those games going 3-0. So they do have a game this week against one of the newly promoted side, Huesca. So they'll obviously be looking at that game as a big time opportunity to go and continue up the standings. But 11 points in 6 matches played. Only 2 goals allowed in those 6 matches. That is a big time start for Real Sociedad, and you got to give it up to their players. I mean, bringing in David Silva was huge. Mikel Oyarzabal, William Jose, Alexander Isak, Adnan Januzaj, Nacho Monreal. They got some pretty solid veterans mixed with that young talent. Even Mikel Merino, I gotta mention Mikel Merino. Come on. So overall, very, very solid for Real Sociedad. Great start to the season, and I mean, you can only be impressed. I mean, they've scored the most goals so far to start the season in their 6 matches, and they're looking like a real threat. Next, we have Villarreal with the same record as Real Sociedad and with 11 points. The same brought that momentum into the Europa League, looking great with a 5-3 win. But before that, I mean, even with a red card, even though it was late in the game from Kubo, which, I don't know what happened there, but, he needs to obviously, clear that up, especially after it was actually a second yellow, so he needs to clean that up, and he came off the bench, but they got the 2 goals that they needed early on. Gonzalo Guedes scored for Valencia against Villarreal, but Villarreal got those ultimate 3 points there. They also defeated Alaves 3-1. They got a draw against Atletico Madrid, a goalless draw at that, and then they defeated Eibar. They did lose to Barcelona 4-0, which I was expecting that game to be a lot closer, because I feel like Villarreal have a lot of strong players in their team. Like I've already said, Kubo, they got Paco Alcacer, they brought in Dani Parejo, and they obviously got their talisman Gerard Moreno. They got a lot of strong players in their team, and I feel like they're certainly going to be a threat throughout this season. I feel like I kind of expected them to be a European competition type of team, kind of in that 7-6-5 range. And the start of the season is showing me right. 8 goals, 8 goals scored, 8 goals allowed for a 0 goal differential, and solid start to the season for them. Next, we have Getafe, who incredible season for them to start. They got 3 wins, 1 draw, and a loss in their first 5 games. They've only allowed 3 goals as well, so they've been very strong there. They've only scored 5 though, so the offense needs to be there. They had an incredible win against Barcelona their last time out with a 1-0 victory. They did lose to Real Sociedad 3-0. But then they defeated Real Betis the week before that 3-0, and then got a goalless draw against Alaves, and then defeated Osasuna 1-0. So they've gotten the results that you expect, but then they've gotten some that you don't expect with that 1-0 win against Barcelona. Huge game for them. And got a very, very exciting 3 points there. And honestly, I feel like that ultimately makes a difference to why Barcelona's down in 10th and Getafe are in 4th. So, huge time start for them. Next, we have Elche, one of the, we're going to have back-to-back newly promoted sides up here now, who in 5 games got 3 wins in La Liga. Just huge results for them. They got a win against Valencia. They got a win against Alaves. They got a draw against the other newly promoted side, Huesca, in that newly promoted derby there. They defeated Eibar as well, and but they did lose to Real Sociedad 3-0, which is what pretty much what's happening to everyone there. Losing to Real Sociedad big time, but still, man, 10 points in 5 games. That is certainly not expected from Elche. I expected them to be one of the lower sides. I mean, of course, this is still just the beginning of the season, so there's a lot more football to be played. But the early signs from Elche are really, really good. Same thing goes for Cadiz, who 6 games in have 3 wins, 1 draw, and 2 losses. Same amount of points. They've scored 6, allowed 6, so it's been pretty even for them. But they got a huge time. Same thing that happened to Barcelona. Cadiz defeated Real Madrid 1-0. Not something anybody expected. But then they also got that draw against Granada. They defeated Athletic Club, even being a man down early in the game. They got a 48th minute. They actually were down to 9 men for most of this game, and it was kind of a tough game for Atletico. I mean, they for Athletic Club, they got an own goal, and then were up 2 men on Cadiz, but then, Cadiz were just able to hold on, and obviously playing that park the bus football works sometimes, and it certainly did for them there. They did get a loss against Osasuna, or was that a club? No, that was the start of the season for them. So strong start for Cadiz. They did lose to Sevilla 3-1, but I'm actually surprised that Sevilla haven't done as good as you would expect. That's one of their only results this season. But Cadiz getting that win against Real Madrid, Athletic Club, and then defeating Huesca, they've looked very solid. They look like a team that want to stay in La Liga past this year. Next, we have Granada, which also playing very strong to start the season. 5 matches in, they've got 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. They've scored 7, allowed 8, so the defense has not been as good as I would expect. But they take their momentum into the Europa League. Like I've already talked about, they defeated PSV, but they beat Sevilla 1-0, even though Sevilla and Sevilla were down a man early in this game, so that kind of made it easy for them. But they got that goal late from their loanee Yangel Herrera. I love that kid. He's looking really good for them. But then you also got Darwin Machis, you got Jorge Molina, Luis Suarez, and obviously not the Luis Suarez we all know, but still they got some pretty solid players throughout this team. And Granada, our team, I feel like can surprise once again. Even though I had them as a mid-table club, I feel like they could once again, challenge for one of those European spots. Next, we have Real Betis, who in 6 matches have 3 wins and 3 losses. They have a -2 goal differential, so haven't really been as dominant as you would expect. They did defeat Valencia, which I kind of expect everyone to beat Valencia this season. They did lose to Getafe, even though they had a red card in that game. They also lost to Real Sociedad and Real Madrid, but that game they also had a red card, so they just need to be more disciplined, man, because, before that they had beaten Alaves and they beat Valladolid, which, even though those are expected wins, they still, get those clubs and they defeat them. You gotta beat the clubs that are in front of you. But Real Betis at least gets 3 wins in their first 6 matches, even though they've lost the other 3. A lot of that has to do with their discipline. They need to be more disciplined, not get red cards, and they'll have chances in most of these games. Next, you have Atletico Madrid, who in 4 games, they obviously have a game to 2 games in hand against most of these teams, so you should expect them to move up a little higher in the standings. Have 2 wins and 2 draws. They have been absolutely dominant in their games. They've scored 8 goals and allowed just 1. That one being against against Granada, when they completely destroyed them 6-1. They did get a draw against Huesca, which was very surprising, and another draw against Villarreal. Both of those goalless draws, which if from Atletico, I'm not really surprised. But then they defeated Celta Vigo 2-0. So they have started the season off pretty strong. I mean, getting Luis Suarez and João Felix, Diego Costa together has obviously worked out perfectly. I'm not a fan of Carrasco. I feel like, even though he's not a terrible player, I don't feel like he fits this team right. I feel like they need to try to get him off of their books. But then you got one of the better goalkeepers in Jan Oblak, backed up by Renan Lodi, Felipe, Jose Jimenez, of course. And then they got their veterans in Saul and Coque. I really like this team. Oh, and I can't forget to mention Angel Correa, who's been great for them as well. They're number 10. But still, strong start to the season for Atletico so far. And, once they get a couple of those games back, they got one this weekend against Real Betis. That's going to be a very exciting game to watch. Just have to see how they perform. Next, we have Barcelona, who 5 games in have 2 wins, a draw, and 2 losses. Obviously, not the kind of start Ronald Koeman wanted to his career in Barcelona. They did lose a Clásico this weekend, 3-1 to Real Madrid, but they also got a terrible loss to Getafe, 1-0. They can't lose those kind of games. I mean, they defeated Celta Vigo 3-0. They defeated Villarreal 4-0. So they obviously started the season well, but then a draw against Sevilla kind of spelled what the things to come. And even though in the Champions League they looked dominant, obviously you got to look at the competition they were taking on. It wasn't very strong, but still, you need to see more from them. And it's not a great start. Not a great start for Barcelona whatsoever. Even though they've scored 9 goals. But they've allowed 5, so the defense obviously still isn't up to par. And for a former defender like Ronald Koeman, he's going to want to change that up a bit. Next, we have Sevilla. 4 games in, they've got 2 wins, a draw, and a loss. So obviously, they still have they have a couple games in hand on the teams above them. So they're obviously also, I feel like they're going to squeak up a bit. They do take on Eibar this weekend. And then they have Sevilla and then they have Athletic Club after that. So I feel like they have some very winnable games coming up. But the thing is, they have some Champions League in between all that. So, there's going to be a lot of, players being played extra. I mean, they do have the talent, though. They got Luke de Jong. I love Lucas Ocampos. Getting Ivan Rakitic on this team is going to be huge. And their defenders, Jules Conde and Diego Carlos, are obviously big-time players as well. Overall, I feel like they have a very strong club. But you need to see more. You need to see more from what Sevilla can do. And they've got it. They got the talent. But again, need to do more. They need to do more. And even though they're only 4 games in, they've only scored 5 goals in those 4 games. They have only allowed 3, so the defense has been there. But you need to see better results. Next, you got Osasuna, who 5 games in have 2 wins, a draw, and 2 losses. They've scored 5 goals and scored 4 and have been scored on 4 times. Honestly, I'm not really expecting much from Osasuna. They did get a draw against Eibar, even with a man down. A goalless draw against Alaves. They did defeat Celta Vigo, but Celta Vigo are not one of the better teams here. They did have a bad loss against Levante early on in this season, 3-1, and they lost to Getafe 1-0 as well. So some bad losses to teams that they can probably beat, but just not a great start for them either. Valencia, 7 games in. They've played the most games so far this season. They have won 2 of them, drawn 1, and lost 4. Kind of what I expected from Valencia. They've allowed the most goals so far this season, even compared to the teams, down at the bottom. Their defense has been the worst out of all of them, but their offense has at least kept them in some games. They did lose against Elche this weekend. They lost to Villarreal the weekend before that, and Real Betis, but they did beat Real Sociedad. That's a big-time result for them. A draw against Huesca does not look good. Another loss to Celta Vigo, also not looking good. They did beat Levante, so, you got to kind of take it where it is. I mean, they've beaten a team that not many expected them to beat, but then the other win is against a team that's one of the worst in the league this year, and then some draws that you kind of are looking at, like, if you're going to defeat Real Sociedad, you got to beat Huesca. But that's just the way Valencia are. I mean, they have a lot of young players. I mean, they're relying on guys like Maximiliano Gomez, Jose Gaya, Goncalo Guedes, Yunus Musa, Jasper Chilisang. So they're relying on a lot of young players. But they gotta do better. They gotta do better. But I mean, I'm not expecting them to do better. But at least with some of the results that you've seen, if they're going to beat a team like Real Sociedad, they need to do better than what they have so far this season. Next, you have Athletic Club, who 5 games in have 2 wins and 3 losses. Haven't really shown much on the offensive end. I mean, they've only scored 4 goals, allowed 5. They have a bad loss against Alaves once they were up 2 men actually, and still lost that game. Same thing against Cadiz. It's just like terrible losses for them. Both 1-0 losses. That Cadiz one was the one where they were up 2 men, and the Alaves one, even though they were up a man just late in that game, still, you gotta beat those clubs, and they just have not done that. They did defeat Levante, which you have to do. They have to beat those clubs, and then they lost to Granada and they defeated Eibar. So they beat some teams that you would expect them to beat, but then other teams, they just had some terrible results this season. Next, we have Eibar, who have a win, 2 draws, and 3 losses to start this season. They have that they have a draw to Osasuna, who were a man down late in the game, but it was a goalless draw in the end. They did defeat Valladolid, even though they had a man down late, and they scored a goal with their man down with a red card. They also lost to Elche, they lost to Athletic Club, they lost to Villarreal, and they had a goalless draw against Celta Vigo as well. But really, a lot of this has to do with their discipline. Same thing with the club I talked about earlier. They need to do more, and but still, you're going to see Eibar as one of the teams that are going to be down here for most of the season. Same thing with Huesca, who are next. They've got 5 draws to start their season. 6 matches in, 5 draws. Those draws were against Atletico Madrid, which was a solid draw. Another one against Valencia. Another one against Villarreal, Elche, and Valladolid. I mean, against Elche, Valladolid, I mean, you got even Valencia. They need to try to get more results than that. But to draw against Atletico, draw against Villarreal, those are some solid results there. They did get a bad loss against Cadiz, even though they're looking like a better team compared to Huesca here, and they just need to do more. They're led by Shinji Okazaki, Rafa Mir, Pablo Maffeo, but they just need to do more than they have so far this season. And then you got Celta Vigo, which I've always expected them to be this low. They lost to Atletico Madrid. They've lost to Barcelona. They did beat Valencia and drew against Valladolid, which are 2 results that you kind of need to get there. Even though Valladolid are one of the worst teams this season, a 1-1 draw is kind of expected there. Osasuna defeated them 2-0. So there's some games here that they probably could have done better than, but for the most part, I feel like Celta Vigo, this is where they are going to be. They got Iago Aspas there, Nolito. They got some solid players, but for the most part, I just don't think they have enough all around on this team to really make a difference. Next, we got, now we have the relegated teams. Let's go over them real quick. We got Alaves, we have Valladolid, and Levante. Alaves has gotten a win and a draw. So they got 4 points, 6 matches in. Valladolid have gotten 3 draws and 3 losses, and Levante have lost 4 games and won 1 of their 5 games. So Levante does have a match in hand over Alaves and Valladolid, and even the teams above them. So if they can win their next game, which they have the game against, who do they play? They play against Celta Vigo. So that's going to be a big time game for them. And whichever team wins there, that can honestly be a game that kind of, what is it, like what am I trying to say here? It's kind of like a show of what's to come for the rest of the season for these 2 clubs, Celta Vigo and Levante. So, they got to get results. They have allowed 10 goals, one of the, worst in the entire league, have scored 5, but you just need to see more from these teams, but I don't expect to see. I see all these teams being in the relegation battle for pretty much the entire season. So that's going to wrap it up for this segment. Make sure you guys stick around, because when I come back, we're going to be talking about the top 10 wingers of all time.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, everyone. If you missed the last segment, I went over the La Liga early impressions, just the season overall, how it's gone so far. Even though we're only a few games in, I just wanted to give my thoughts on what, how the teams are looking so far. And now we are going to be getting into my favorite part of the show, giving you my top 10 wingers of all time. We have some incredible names on this list, some legends of the game, and obviously a few guys that you will probably remember. So let's get right into it and starting with number 10, we have Sir Stanley Matthews, one of the greatest players of all time and one of the longest tenured players ever. Matthews stayed in shape long enough to be able to play top level football until he was 50 years old. Think about that, guys. 50 years old. Like, we don't see guys doing that at all anymore. Like, you expect a goalkeeper to be able to, like Buffon now, like he's in his almost mid 40s, and that's still really old. And you're kind of thinking like, oh, he's kind of in his last legs already. He's not even starting really. But man, Stanley Matthews was able to play until he was 50. He is the oldest player to play in the English top football division at 50 years old, and to represent his country at 42 years old. Just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and it all had to do, it was all part of his insane training regimen where he would literally watch everything he ate and drank. There was a quote that I saw that the only time Matthews ever drank alcohol was when he was drinking champagne out of the FA Cup. I mean, that just goes to show you what kind of player Matthews was and how much he cared about the game. Now, here's a couple of the all-time greats talking about him. One of the better defenders of all time, or in my list, the best defender of all time, Franz Beckenbauer, saying that the speed and skill Matthews had meant almost no one in the game could stop him. John Charles said he was the best crosser I've ever seen. And considering that he played with that old heavy ball that they had, that whenever it would rain, it would, the material would soak up the rain, that's saying something. Like, the guy was an amazing player. He had excellent control of the ball, great dribbling abilities as well, and combine that speed, which made him, and combined with his speed, it just made him one of the most dangerous players in the world. And early in his career, he was a prolific goal scorer. I mean, he would later collect the ball further down the pitch and utilize his passing ability, but I mean, he was just an overall great player, Sir Stanley Matthews. Let's go over a few of his accomplishments, which include he won the Ballon d'Or in 1956, was the FWA Footballer of the Year 2 times, won the FA Cup once, and won the British Home Championship 9 times. He is now in the English Football Hall of Fame and is absolutely deserved of that honor. Next, at number 9, we have Robert Pires, the French magician. Pires was one of the greatest Arsenal players of all time, an absolute irreplaceable player during his prime years. He had flair, charisma, confidence, and that's expected when you play alongside players like Thierry Henry, Bergkamp, and Patrick Vieira. Obviously, he had incredible players playing around him. However, despite all those players on his team, he still stood out over all of them when they won that league title in 2000-2001, one of the greatest Arsenal season of all time. He won the Footballer of the Year that year, was the assist leader in the Premier League, was just an absolute god. And, just like you could see it, like when he was carrying the trophy during that year, he had all of his teammates like worshiping him like a god. So you know that he was such an important player there, and he had an excellent eye for goals as well and could finish with the best of them. I mean, he was just so cheeky with some of the goals that he would put up. And I remember seeing one where he was literally on the left flank, wasn't really near the box yet, but he could tell that the goalkeeper was a little bit off his line and just skyrocketed right over him. It looked so easy, and that was just Robert Pires for you, man. Let's just go over a few of his accomplishments. He won the Premier League twice, won 3 FA Cups. He won the World Cup in 1998, the Euros in 2000, and 2 FIFA Confederations Cups with France as well. Like I said, he was Footballer of the Year and was the assist leader that same season. And in that FIFA Confederations Cup, he won the Golden Ball and Golden Shoe. So aside from being a great assister, he can score with the best of them. So Robert Pires, number 9, best winger of all time, absolutely deserved. Next, at number 8, we have Ryan Giggs. Ryan Giggs not only, was a great player for Manchester United, he was Manchester United. He is the most consistent and versatile, one of the most consistent and versatile players of all time, as he never seemed to fall off throughout his time there at Man U. I mean, he could play pretty much any position in the attack or midfield and was used that way throughout his career. I mean, he had excellent technical abilities, and combine that with his pace and acceleration to boot, he was just an absolute magician with the ball. His vision and passing was also one of his greatest strengths. And early on his career, Giggs would look to score more. Since he had more pace, he would look to get up the pitch a lot more. With using that trickery with the ball, and just score more goals. But then as he got older, he utilized his passing abilities, getting the ball, further down the pitch in the midfield, and he'd be able to dictate the pace of the game from there. And one of the things that stood out the most about Giggs was his leadership and longevity, really, as throughout his 24-season playing career for Manchester United, he was never sent off. He was sent off once when he played for Wales. Just once in his 24 seasons. That is an absolute huge accomplishment. And just going over a couple of these awards that he's won 13 Premier League titles. That is a record. That is a record amount of titles won by one player. He won 2 UEFA Champions Leagues. He won 4 FA Cups, 3 EFL Cups, 9 FA Community Shields. He won the PFA Young Player of the Year award twice. And he won the PFA Players Player of the Year award once. And just going over a couple of these records, he is the only Manchester United player to be a part of all 13 titles for the club. He has the most Premier League assists ever with 162. And he's the only player to play in 22 successive Premier League seasons. Oh, and of course, most appearances by a Manchester United player with over 600. Just an absolutely incredible career for Ryan Giggs. Absolutely one of the best wingers of all time. Next, we have Luis Figo. One of the first players that I ever found out. One of the first all-time players that I found out about. One of my friends who's a Real Madrid fan told me about him and showed me this highlight of him, having pretty much a clear chance at goal, but then giving a super nice backheel to Benzema, where I'm sure plenty of you know that highlight, and it just made me understand what kind of player Luis Figo was. I mean, just an absolutely unselfish player, and at his physical peak, he was quick, elegant, and just had so much skill to spare. His dribbling was some of the best you'll ever see, and it allowed him to take on defenders one-on-one and normally came out on top. I mean, the guy was an animal. Figo is also more, he's more known for his vision and passing more than anything, as he's second in the La Liga all-time list for assists behind only Messi. And despite this incredible passing skill that he has, he's also known for contributing with powerful struck goals. He was also accurate with free kicks and penalties as well. So he can pretty much do it all. And on top of that, Figo is one of the few players in history to make that gutsy move from Barcelona to Real Madrid. And I'm sure plenty of you remember that it did not go over well with fans. I mean, when I looked at the video of him returning back to the Camp Nou when he was with Real Madrid in that 2001 season, I believe, and the only thing that I can remember that was that bad was when LeBron James went back to Cleveland when he went to the Miami Heat. And, I mean, I had never felt anything like that. This was pretty much just like that. You could see the anger in those fans' faces, but, man, Luis Figo certainly was one of the best players of all time. He won the Ballon d'Or in 2000. He won 4 La Liga titles, 2 with Barcelona, 2 with Real Madrid. He won 4 Serie A titles with Inter Milan. He won the Champions League with Real Madrid, won 2 Copa del Reys, 3 Supercopa de Españas, 2 Supercopa Italianas. He was the Portuguese Footballer of the Year 6 times and was the La Liga Foreign Player of the Year 3 times. Just an absolute incredible career from Luis Figo. Certainly deserves to be one of the best wingers of all time. Number 6, we have Garrincha. Now, the first time I ever heard about Garrincha was actually in FIFA when he was used as an icon. Because again, I'm not, a soccer historian. But I like learning about all these top players, and he is one of the greatest dribblers of all time, and considered by many as the second greatest Brazilian of all time behind Pelé. Of course, what happened, after his playing career really sucks. Like, I read about it, and it's just a terrible ending for such a, great player. But when he was with Brazil, Brazil only lost 1 match with him on the pitch. That means that the influence that he had when he was there was great and made all of his teammates better. That is something that you don't see very often anymore. He grew up in poverty, and his right leg was shorter than his left, so, he could have easily used that as an excuse, but instead he used it to his advantage and became a legend. He was obviously known for that dribbling, but Garrincha also had incredible ball control, acceleration, and crossing skills, plus he always seemed to find a way to create space out of nothing. Garrincha also had a deadly shot with both feet, and was a dead ball specialist. He won the Ballon d'Or in 1962, won the Rio de Janeiro State Championship 3 times, the Rio Sao Paulo Tournament 2 times. He won the FIFA World Cup twice, the O'Higgins Cup, which was a tournament between which I didn't know. I've talked about the O'Higgins Cup in another list. I didn't know this was just a tournament between Chile and Brazil from 1955 to 1966, but they won it 3 times. He was the 1962 FIFA World Cup Golden Ball and Golden Boot winner. So, was obviously an absolute animal that year. Won the FIFA World Cup, was on the FIFA World Cup All-Star team twice, and made it to the World Soccer World 11 in 1962. That was obviously his best year and was an absolute legend of the game. Next, we have Francisco Gento. One of the most club-decorated footballers of all time, and is one of the greatest Spanish players of all time as well. He was known for his quickness down the pitch and his excellent vision and technical skills. That helped him rack up a bunch of assists regularly, while also being able to score. He had multiple double-digit goal-scoring seasons throughout his time with Real Madrid, and so that just goes to show he can do whatever he needed to do on the pitch, and was an absolute legend for Real Madrid. You could just go over a couple of these accomplishments, and this man was a winner. 12 La Liga titles, 6 Champions Leagues, 2 Copa del Reys, and made it to the World Soccer World 11 3 separate times. His records are he won the most La Liga titles, the most Champions League titles, most Champions League final appearances, tied with Paolo Maldini with 8, and he had the most major trophies with Real Madrid at 23. An absolute legend, Francisco Gento. Next, at number 4, we have Roberto Ray Rivellinio. Rivellinio is known as one of the most graceful players of all time, and incredible enough, he was the biggest inspiration to Diego Maradona. I mean, that just goes to show you that this man was an absolute legend. To be an inspiration to someone who would become one of the greatest players of all time, that just goes to show. He perfected, what he was mainly known for. One of the things that he was an absolute, contributor to this game was he perfected the elastico move, which is one of the most incredible moves to perform in football today. When you see that move being done, it's like wow, that's incredible, and it probably wouldn't be in today's game if it wasn't for Rivellinio. He's famous for, of course, that large mustache of his, but aside from that, he could pretty much do it all on the field, as he had excellent ball control and dribbling skills, made it look easy to get by defenders, and he combined those skills with long-range shooting, vision, and of course his long crossing and passing abilities. He was also an excellent free kick taker. So you go through some of his accomplishments. He won the World Cup in 1970 and made it to the All-Star team that year as well. He won 2 Campeonato Carriosa, won the Torneo Rio Sao Paulo title in 1966, won the Silver Ball South American Footballer of the Year in 1977, and the Bronze Ball South American Footballer of the Year twice, and made it to the CONMEBOL All-Star team as well. Just an absolutely unbelievable career for Roberto Rivellinio. One of the, I guess you could say, what I'm trying to say, the pioneers of this game. Just huge. Next, at number 3, we have George Best. One of the 3 of the Holy Trinity at Manchester United. I've already talked about one, and now we got George Best. I mean, he was the flashiest player of that era and is one of the greatest dribblers in the history of football. I mean, I saw some of his highlights, and I mean, the way he would make guys miss was incredible. And he had like really good pace as well and amazing balance. I mean, because there was times when it looked like he wouldn't be able to hold on to the ball, but like he still kept his balance and was able to continue with his run. You know, the feints, his scoring ability, Best used his body to perfection as he would, those feints that he would use to get by defenders. He just made it look easy. And he also had great heading and passing abilities as well, which made him a complete footballer. But when I was watching some of these highlights and some of his solo runs, I mean, it was a thing of beauty, and it honestly reminds me of Messi. I mean, Diego Maradona is obviously, that guy that you think of when you compare him to Messi. But George Best, like, when Messi goes across the box, or when he's going just outside the box and he's just trying to, fake out defenders and continues to do like little shot fakes and they like bite for him. That was what I saw from George Best a lot. So probably Messi got that from George Best because I didn't see that as much in Maradona. Maradona would just get by his opponents. George Best did the same thing, but when he would try to cross through the box, like he would just fake until he find the right spot and scored. Just an absolute incredible player. He won the Ballon d'Or in 1968, got 3rd place in 1971, won 2 Premier League titles, 1 Champions League. He was the FWA Footballer of the Year and was the Premier League top scorer that same year with 28 goals scored in the English top flight. So absolutely deserved. George Best, number 3, the 3rd best winger in the world of all, just of all time. Huge career. Now we are moving on to the 2 players that I'm sure everyone knows, and the 2 that I have been lucky enough to watch play throughout their careers. Cristiano Ronaldo comes in at number 2. I know some people there's gonna be a lot of stands out there that are like, what is going on with you? I can't listen to you anymore. Just hold on, guys. Come on. Like, don't just because I'm putting Ronaldo. I mean, it's close. It's close. Ronaldo number 2, Messi number 1. It is extremely close. And if you look at just straight accomplishments, there's a case that you can make for Ronaldo. I mean, he won 5 Ballon d'Ors. He won the Premier League 3 times, La Liga twice, Serie A twice, the Champions League 5 times, 4 with Real Madrid, 1 with Man U. He won the Euros. He won the Nations League. He was the FIFA World Player of the Year. He was the European Golden Shoe 4 times. 13-time FIFA 5 Pro World 11, 14-time UEFA Team of the Year. I mean, and he was the La Liga MVP 1 year and Serie A MVP 1 year. Just an absolutely incredible career from Cristiano Ronaldo, and he's still going. I mean, I believe he's like 34, 35 years old right now, and just continues to be, just an incredible specimen. The guy is an athletic beast, and that's one of the things that stands out from him. Just his pace, his strength. What he's able to do with the ball at his height and his size is incredible. And it's overwhelming, really. Like with Messi, I mean, he's smaller. He's not as overwhelming with his movements. Like it's just trickier. But with Ronaldo, it's like the guy is a force. And the way he was able to just score, I never really understood why people considered Ronaldo and Messi, the greatest of all time. It's like, I always felt it was like, oh, they're just people in the moment, they're just looking in the moment that these guys are amazing. But really, as I've gone through like highlights and I've looked at stats of all these top players of all time, I've never seen anybody with as dominant numbers as these two guys. And Ronaldo, I mean, he's been great, and he's gone to so many different clubs, and he's been great at all of them. He's an amazing free kick taker. He can score with the best. He's probably one of the greatest scorers of all time. But he's also an excellent passer. His speed, his dribbling, it's all amazing. One of the best ever. I just can't put him over Lionel Messi, who comes in at number 1. I mean, he won 6 Ballon d'Ors, just one more than Ronaldo, 10 La Liga titles, in all 3 more domestic league titles than Ronaldo has. He has won one less UEFA Champions League, but he's got 6 Copa del Reys, 8 Supercopa de Españas. He's won UEFA Men's Player of the Year twice. He was the FIFA World Player of the Year in 2009. He's won 6 European Golden Shoes, 2 more than Ronaldo. Was the FIFA World Cup best player in 2015 and in 2014. And in 2015 he was the best player at the Copa America. It's just, man, that's probably the one thing that hurts about him. Like, Ronaldo has won a few things in the international level, like the Euros and the Nations League. But with Messi, he just has not been able to get over the hump with Argentina. He did win the Under-20 World Cup like Maradona did, but Maradona was able to lead Argentina to a World Cup win. Messi has not been able to do that. He got close in 2014 before losing to Germany, but that's probably the one thing that, in my opinion, holds him back as one of the greatest of all time. The fact that he has not been able to do it in the international level, and I don't think he's going to be able to, because Argentina just looks like a mess. But really, just the way the way he's able to get by people, the way he's able to his quickness, his scoring ability, his passing, it's just his unselfish, the selfishness. He has no ego. The guy's an amazing player, and in my opinion, he is the greatest of all time. Maybe is just behind Diego Maradona there because of what he's been able to accomplish throughout his career, but Messi is right there. I mean, he has been a great player for Argentina. It's just, man, he has not been able to get him over the hump. Like, when you're there in the final against Germany, I understand Germany are a machine, greatest ever team, one of the best countries ever, but like, once you're there, like, you need to perform and get your team over the hump. But he didn't score a goal. He didn't get over the hump in that final. And if he would have won that World Cup, it would be no contest. Messi would be the greatest ever. But, yep, he did not get it. But he is still the number 1 winger of all time. No doubt in my mind on that one. And that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. So, hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I would really appreciate it. Thank you and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.